Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome. The Agence France Presse reported that according to the Sudanese ambassador in Riyadh, the Vice President of Sudan, Ali Osman Mohammed Taha, signed a peace agreement in Riyadh with the northern opposition leader, Mohammed Osman al-Marghani. The helicopter carrying Polish Prime Minister Leszek Miller made a crash landing in a field near the capital of Warsaw. 10 people were wounded, including the Prime Minister, who was returning from a tour inspecting coal mines. The report indicates that the crash may have been caused by the engine catching on fire or a change in the air pressure. The Iraqi foreign minister was pleased that NATO would be given a greater role in Iraq in an effort to return stability there, which was called for by U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell. However, the General Secretary of NATO, Lord Robertson, confirmed that there are no specific plans for increasing its role in Iraq, indicating currently NATO's priority is to succeed in its mission in Afghanistan. After the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels, Robertson added that they haven't reached a point where one country has made a suggestion concerning Iraq. The Iraqi police announced that 2 police officers and 3 civilians were wounded in a gunfire and missile attack on a police station in the center of Ramadi, west of Baghdad. A police spokesman clarified that one of the 2 wounded police officers was in critical condition. Meanwhile, a U.S. military vehicle caught on fire after it drove over what may have been an explosive device in the area of El-Shadri, south of Baghdad. No information was released about U.S. soldier casualties. A strong explosion shook an area near the U.S. Embassy and the international headquarters in Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan. Eyewitnesses said that unknown men launched missiles towards the U.S. Embassy. However, it missed its target and hit an empty area. While the Hamas movement and Islamic Jihad declare their predictions that the Cairo meetings will not produce a new ceasefire, the Palestinian people have mixed feelings about this ceasefire between total agreement and absolute rejection. However, everyone agrees on the need to achieve national unity.
The announced goal for the Cairo discussions is to put the Palestinian house in order and have the group debate the issues, especially the political developments, not just the issues of reaching a truce and a ceasefire. However, reaching a ceasefire may prove difficult, especially under the shadow of the Israeli facts on the ground and the refusal of the resistance movements to repeat the mistakes of the past ceasefire, indicating that Israel was responsible for its failure.
We learn not to repeat the same mistakes and experiments that we made in the past. Currently, the regional, international, and the internal Palestinian conditions have changed since the previous ceasefire. That time, the Palestinian side made big mistakes. Israel is experiencing a huge internal crisis. It is not the resistance movement goal to get Sharon out of this hole.
If they are willing to stop killing Palestinian civilians, then we are prepared to stop targeting what they call civilians. As long as the occupation remains, the resistance will continue.
From its side, the Fatah movement believes that to reach a ceasefire, there must be specific guarantees with Israeli commitment. Most importantly, stopping incursions, assassinations, in addition to providing international guarantees.
There will not be ceasefire for free from one side, or a compromise from the Palestinian side only. However, an agreement will include compromises on both sides, between the Palestinian and Israeli governments.
The Palestinian opinion is divided between those who support a new ceasefire with Israeli commitments and opponents who believe that it would help take Israel out of its internal crisis.
We need another ceasefire, but not like the last one. Israel caused the previous ceasefire to fail. However, we want a ceasefire that Israel is committed to.
I do not think that any ceasefire will further our interests, but only Israel's interests. On the contrary, we should continue on with our resistance without any ceasefire.
In this regard, the Palestinians agree on one thing. That is the necessity that these discussions succeed in outlining the high priorities of the Palestinian people, especially on internal issues. Palestinians say that they hope that the Cairo discussions will result in strengthening national unity. Hazem Badaro, Abu Dhabi TV, Gaza.
An American military vehicle was burned near Al Jassariya Bridge in Baghdad. The occupation forces said that the fire was caused by an explosion of an old mine, not by an attack. Meanwhile, an attack was launched on the Iraqi police department in the heart of Ramadi with machine guns and missiles, injuring 5 Iraqis, including 2 police officers.
U.S. forces and Iraqi police have intensified the number of patrol units near Al Jassariya Bridge in Baghdad, but that did not stop the attack that targeted an American military vehicle, causing it to burst into flames. The U.S. forces searched the area for those who carried out the attack, which, according to eyewitnesses, injured a number of American soldiers.
The fire started exactly in this area. We did not know if it was a car or just an explosion. We just saw a big fire.
6 Americans were injured.
What happened was that during the exchange operation, the vehicle hit what seemed like an old landmine that was there for a long time. According to our information, the incident was not caused by a real attack.
The American forces closed traffic and even prevented an ambulance car from transferring a sick woman who was on the verge of giving birth to a hospital that was only 1 kilometer away from the location of the attack.
She was in labor and on the verge of giving birth. She was exhausted and in critical condition, but the Americans did not let us take her to the hospital.
We wanted to take her to the hospital because she was in labor, but the Americans did not let us take her to the Al-Karama hospital.
U.S. forces from the 1st Infantry Division was attacked with light arms near Al-Khalidiyya in Al-Ramadiyya district. In response, the American forces announced that it killed one of the attackers and detained 8 others. The U.S. military also announced that it killed 2 and detained 63 others during raids in western Baghdad. During the operation, the U.S. forces confiscated weapons and ammunition in addition to some amount of money in Iraqi dinars and U.S. dollars. Meanwhile, armed men attacked an Iraqi police station in Al-Ramadiyya, western Baghdad, wounding 2 Iraqi police officers and 2 civilians. One of them is in critical condition. The Iraqi police said that unknown men launched missiles and used light firearm from a car as they drove by the police department in the city.
Today, at 6 a.m., unknown men attacked our police department in Ramadi. These kinds of attacks do not affect us. We are doing our duty.
U.S. forces continued home raids and search operations in Al-Mosul city in northern Iraq, searching for the head of the assassination department in the former Iraqi intelligence agency. He has personal ties with Izzuddin Ibrahim al-Duri, the former vice president of Saddam Hussein. It seems that the attackers of American forces are back in the game throughout Iraq. They are now launching their attacks where they started, in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad. Ahmed al-Askari, Al-Manar Channel, Baghdad.
الرسالة with U.S. President George W. Bush, His Majesty the King said despite the hard conditions in the Middle East, he looks forward to more dialogue towards achieving peace in the region. At the White House, King Abdullah thanked Bush for his interest in a settlement in the Middle East and voiced the hope that his Washington trip would give a strong push to dialogue and set peace talks in motion to give hope to Palestinians. President Bush said an unofficial Middle East peace initiative was a useful exercise, but he remained committed to the U.S.-backed peace roadmap. He said the plan, drafted by Israeli opposition figures and Palestinian peace activists, was a productive exercise so long as the authors adhere to U.S. bedrock principles of fighting violence, ensuring security, and providing for the emergence of a free, democratic Palestinian state. In the Oval Office, Bush also said Israelis who support a Palestinian state must be mindful of the need to improve conditions on the ground for the Palestinian people, mentioning the need to freeze Jewish settlements, dismantle illegal outposts, and address concerns about the West Bank barrier. Bush gave his strongest indication that he was willing to work with the new Palestinian leadership under Prime Minister Ahmed Quraya.
A lot of difficulties on the ground at the moment, as we know, but we're all been working very hard behind the scenes to encourage the Palestinian Prime Minister to be able to have the dialogue with the Israelis. We believe that there will be, I hope, some small steps on the ground that move the process forward. We haven't given up on the peace process. The President has been very dedicated from day one, and we appreciate his support. But it's going to be a tough road ahead for all of us.
Everybody knows where I stand. I gave a speech right here in the Rose Garden in June of 2002. I laid out what I believe is necessary to achieve peace in the Middle East. It starts with having a Palestinian state that is at peace with Israel, a Palestinian state based upon democratic principles, a Palestinian state which recognizes the hopes and aspirations of the Palestinian people, and a Palestinian state with leadership which is committed to defeating and dismantling the terrorist organizations who are trying to prevent a Palestinian state from emerging. I also talked about the need for the Israelis to keep in mind that if they support a Palestinian state, which they have told me they do, that the conditions on the ground must be such for a Palestinian state to be able to emerge. And that's why we're continuing to talk to them about the illegal settlements and outposts, illegal outposts and settlements, as well as the fence.
In addition to efforts to revive Middle East peacemaking, Iraq and Jordanian-U.S. ties were key issues at the summit. King Abdullah and President Bush agreed it was important to achieve progress towards assisting Iraqis to run their own affairs.
Very grateful for your support for the region, what you're trying to do to bring peace and stability for all of us in the Middle East, Iraq, the Israelis, the Palestinians. And so I'm looking forward to our discussions today and see how we can best bring hope to all of the people of our part of the world.
Calling His Majesty one of his closest friends in the world, President Bush pledged that Washington would back Jordan's reform program.
I view His Majesty as one of our really close friends in the world. You know, I went to London recently and gave a speech about reform in the Middle East and the possibilities of governments that adhere to rule of law and transparency and women's rights and economic freedom. And Your Majesty, you're doing just that. I'm proud of your leadership. You're a modern leader with a big heart and a vision for what is best for your people. I also want to thank you for your very strong support and our mutual desire to bring peace to the Middle East.
Foreign Minister Marwan Mashar said His Majesty conveyed to the U.S. President Palestinian proposals to put the peace process back on track. He said the Jordanian side emphasized that efforts should be made for a speedy handover of sovereignty to an inclusive Iraqi government, and the occupation had to come to an end. His Majesty later met with the U.S. National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice. Palestinian organizations have opened talks in Cairo over a possible mutual ceasefire with Israel to revive peace negotiations. Officials who attended the start of the three-day talks said Egypt's intelligence chief Omar Suleiman urged the 13 factions to bury differences so the governments of Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Quraya could resume the deadlocked negotiations with Israel. Suleiman told them not to leave Cairo without an agreement among them. Palestinian officials said the factions, including Hamas and Islamic Jihad, were discussing a two-stage ceasefire that, if agreed, would be announced later on Saturday or Sunday. Egyptian Foreign Minister Ahmed Maher said the Palestinian organizations were willing to accept a ceasefire, but warned that success hinged on Israel's readiness to join a truce. Today, the Palestinian Prime Minister left for Cairo to join the ceasefire talks. He said after meeting with a U.S. congressman that the Egyptian broker talks were going well. Israel has already voiced skepticism about the idea of a Palestinian ceasefire, but Deputy Defense Minister Zeev Boim said Israel was willing to give the Palestinian Authority a chance to end violence. Korea was also still hopeful that he would meet the Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon.
There are preparations by the Chief of Cabinet in both sides. I hope that something will be arranged, but up to this moment, I don't see that there are a fixed date for the meeting, because we want a good preparation for good results and for a good talks. This is what we want. But the important thing is about, we talked now with the congressman, the American congressman, about the wall. And we told them that we cannot accept the wall to be built inside our territories.
But the Israeli government was against meetings between key members of the U.S. administration and authors of the Geneva Accord, a symbolic Middle East peace pact. Israeli leftist Yosef Belan and former Palestinian cabinet minister Yasser Abed-Rabbo, along with other moderates, drafted the Geneva Accord to fill a void after 3 years of violence. The two men defended the plan as a workable solution to untouchable issues that was intended to advance, not undermine, the roadmap. But the Israeli government urged world governments not to interfere with Israeli politics.
Now, while Israel is always supportive of dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians, it is clear that only the democratically elected government of Israel has the authority to dispatch negotiators to sit with Palestinians and reach agreements. It is our hope that friendly countries around the world respect the democratic choices of the people of Israel and don't get drawn into our domestic politics.
Israel's warning to Washington not to meddle in Israeli politics was the latest show of displeasure over planned U.S. talks with authors of the Geneva Pact. The rare public row between Israel and its chief ally continued to smolder after U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell said he would meet with the architects of the informal Geneva peace plan tomorrow, despite Israeli misgivings. Powell also said staff-level members of the Bush administration would see them. But Powell reiterated that the Bush administration's commitment to the U.S.-backed Middle East Roadmap peace plan, which has been bogged down for months.
I think we'll be meeting with them tomorrow, but let me put it in perspective. We are strongly committed to the roadmap. Why? Because the roadmap captures the vision that President Bush laid out in his June 24th speech of last year.
Two Palestinian citizens were wounded and 17 others were arrested during a new incursion by Israeli army into Gaza on the West Bank. More in the following.
In the occupied Palestinian territories, two Palestinian youngsters were wounded during clashes with Israeli forces in the Balata camp in the city of Nablus. Israeli army arrested 17 Palestinian citizens during an incursion into Jenin and its suburbs. Two Palestinians were arrested near Gosh Katif settlement in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli army announced a state of high alert in Wadi Araba region and the villages surrounding it in the 1948 territories. Israeli forces closed Rafah crossing point along the borders with Egypt and Salah ad-Din Road, which connects the north with the south in Gaza, following a demonstration in which hundreds of Palestinians took part in protest of the so-called Geneva document. In occupied Jerusalem, Palestinian demonstrators clashed with Israeli police as they tried to obstruct attempts by Israeli bulldozers to dig up a ground for setting up a new Israeli settlement unit in the city. Palestinian youngsters opened fire at an Israeli military patrol near Kfir Daroum settlement south of Gaza, causing the serious injury of one Israeli officer. Rafiq al-Netshi, the Speaker of the Palestinian Legislative Council, called on the international community and the democratic forces in the world to interfere in order to put an end to the oppressive measures perpetrated by Israeli troops against the Palestinian people. Al-Netshi expressed optimism over the discussions going on in Cairo among several Palestinian factions, pointing out that these factions agree in principle to achieve the Palestinian national objectives.
A new shipment of aid was sent today as a gift from the Syrian Arab people to their brethren in the occupied Palestinian territories. The shipment includes hundreds of tons of medical equipment, food and clothes. Head of the Syrian Arab Committee for Supporting the Intifada, Mr. Ahmed Abdul Karim, paid farewell to the convoy at the southern entrance of Damascus. In a speech he delivered, Mr. Al-Karim thanked the Syrian Arab people for their generosity and their continuous support of the Palestinian cause. An American military spokesman announced that American occupation troops in Baghdad arrested an aide to the prominent religious leader in Iraq, Muqtada al-Sadr. Yesterday, American troops arrested 150 Iraqis during a wide-scale inspection campaign in search of Aizat Ibrahim al-Duri, the former Iraqi official in the city of Kirkuk, north of Iraq. The director of local police in the city of Al-Huwaija affirmed that the former aide of al-Duri, Saad Muhammad Ibrahim, was arrested. American troops entered the village of Al-Huwaija at dawn yesterday using more than 1,000 soldiers who laid a siege on the city. In this context, the American newspaper Washington Post said that the United States has decided to build up an Iraqi military force whose main job is to chase those it calls attackers. American officials were quoted by the paper saying the force will consist of 850 fighters from different Iraqi parties. In Afghanistan, 2 U.S. soldiers were injured, one seriously, when an Afghan policeman threw a grenade at a U.S. military vehicle in the southern city of Kandahar. The blast occurred in a crowded market area center of Kandahar as 4 U.S. military vehicles were driving through. U.S. soldiers cordoned off the side as they evacuated the area.
Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa warned in Lebanon on Thursday the situation in the Middle East has become very dangerous in the absence of any peace process. Speaking after his meeting with Lebanese President Emil Lahoud, Moussa stressed that the current situation requires a lot of caution as well as a common unified stand to allow the Arab position to regain respect. The Arab League chief was attending a conference on Arab thought that opened in Beirut earlier Thursday. And in Brussels, U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell said Thursday that he would meet with the architects of an alternative Middle East peace plan on Friday. Powell was referring to the authors of the Geneva Accord, an unofficial peace plan that Israel has rejected as a capitulation to the uprising. He underlined Washington's commitment to the internationally backed roadmap for peace and reiterated calls for the Palestinian National Authority to crack down on activists. On Iraq, the U.S. high-ranking official said that NATO alliance was discussing doing more to share the U.S. military burden in Iraq and did not need a new UN resolution to do so. Speaking after meeting NATO foreign ministers, he also called on allies to consider a more prominent role for NATO in the post-war stabilization of Iraq, where the alliance currently provides low-level and indirect support. As a reaction, the Iraqi interim foreign minister said Iraq would greatly welcome a heightened all international efforts and NATO's role as well to help restore stability in the country. And a police station in central Iraq was attacked by unknown assailants on Thursday, wounding 2 police officers and injuring 4 civilians. An Iraqi police official said the Ramadi Police Directorate, 160 kilometers west of Baghdad, was struck by 2 rockets as officers gathered inside to receive their monthly salary. And in south-central Baghdad on Thursday, a roadside bomb detonated near an American military vehicle. No one was injured in the incident. U.S. soldiers closed the road near the burning vehicle, blocking traffic in the city.
Leader of the Islamic Revolution Ayatollah Ali Khamenei called on people from all walks of life on Thursday to cooperate in a national plan to battle measles and German measles, saying all state institutions have a duty to ready for the major health drive Iran has made. In a meeting with Health Minister Masoud Pezeshkian and the officials in charge of the National Vaccination Project, the leader said the plan is a valuable service which is in the best interest of the members of the public and the country, adding Islam places emphasis on such public services as well. Ayatollah Khamenei echoed the fact that a healthy society should put prevention above cure, saying implementation of plans like polio vaccination lie at the center of efforts to improve public health and that such services are highly appreciated by the Almighty. The leader then extended his appreciation to the Health Ministry, Basiji Volunteer Force, and other members working on the plan to inoculate the Iranian society against the two diseases, and said the liability lies with the mass media to shed more light on various aspects of the plan and garner the true cooperation of the nation for the effective national immunization plan. The world's most inclusive vaccination plan will get underway across Iranian villages, towns and cities as of December the 6th. Announcing that on Thursday, Deputy Health Minister Mohammad Ismail Akbari said under the National Health Move, 33 million people aged between 5 and 25 will be vaccinated against measles and German measles, a figure which accounts for over 95% of Iranian citizens in that age spectrum, about 70% of whom are university and school students and soldiers. Detailing on the plan, the senior official went on to say a total of 350,000 specialized and volunteer forces will participate in the 25-day nationwide plan, under which 1.3 million people are scheduled to receive vaccine shots on a daily basis. Visiting Djiboutian President Ismail Omar Guelleh left Tehran early Thursday and was officially seen off by Iran's Commerce Minister Mohammad Shariat Madari. Iran and Djibouti signed on Thursday a joint statement which calls for exchange of economic, political and cultural delegations to study bilateral, regional and international developments. The joint statement, signed in presence of President Mohammad Khatami and his Djiboutian counterpart, also condemns the atrocities of the Zionist regime against the defenseless Palestinians and voiced support for the Palestinians' fight to liberate their land. Condemning the plots of those who try to distort the image of Islam, the statement lashes out at any act of terrorism. On the Iraq crisis, the two sides meanwhile reaffirmed the need to preserve Iraq's territorial integrity, national unity and independence, and called for the immediate withdrawal of occupiers from the country. President Mohammad Khatami calls for a rise in investment insurance coverage in Iran, which currently stands at a meager rate of 15% only. Addressing a gathering of managers of Iranian insurance companies in Tehran on Thursday, the chief executive said a 42% growth in the insurance industry and a more than five-fold hike in the insurance dues during the recent 6 years indicate a good yet insufficient development in the industry. Pinpointing promotion of insurance as a prerequisite to enhance investment security, the president reiterated the government is duty-bound to meet the demands of all the citizens to enjoy security and dignity. Elsewhere in his remarks, Mr. Khatami called for proper measures to make up for the negative commercial balance in the Four National Development Plan.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.